Welcome to another episode of the Waffle Shop podcast. Today, I'm joined by an absolute legend, singer, songwriter, producer, probably going to be my new best friend after this. Is
Yeah, basically.
Brendan Brown from Wheatus. Welcome to the
Hello.
Waffle Shop.
Thank you for having me. This is a cherished opportunity, and I'm very grateful and honored.
Something because like the teenager inside, no, that sounds really weird, but like my past version of Taylor is what I'll say. Is
Version
probably
one,
screaming right
version
now.
2.0, maybe.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Is screaming right now because you guys like soundtracked like my teens and every other age that I've been through. To be fair, you have always been there, so
Yeah.
thank you.
Sorry about that.
To
I I I'm reminded this in these ways that we've been around for a long time. It doesn't feel like it's been a long time. Um, feels like it's been a very short time. Um, time is well, we could have another podcast about
Yeah,
time,
welcome
but
to part 6.
yeah. Yeah. Um, in any case, whenever it comes back to us and however it comes back to us, especially when it comes back this way, we're reminded that we are human beings who do things and put them out there into the universe, and that they should and could come back and be ready for that.
I like that. I felt
Yeah.
that. That was beautiful.
Well, when you're judged, when you put your podcast out on the internet or you throw
Yeah.
your songs up on a YouTube video or whatever, the world gets to say what they think of it, you know? And it's not all positive all the time. So, you got to, it's part of the creative process is you get to a point where you think you've done a good enough job and you have to go. You have
There they
to
go.
subject
Yeah.
yourself to the masses and see what they say. So a lot of
To be
creative projects never
fair,
get past that, right? It's a challenge. It's hard.
speaking of challenges and things being difficult, I start each one of my shows with something called the weekly waffle, and that is something.
Okay.
Sometimes it can be a little bit petty, but it gets on my nerves to a point that I feel like I need to waffle about it. That's what we're all about here at the Waffle Shop.
Go on then.
So the thing that has been really winding me up, especially this week, is jobs worths. I don't know if you have them where you are. So it's those people who go above and beyond when it comes to their job. That and they like to remind other people that they've gone above and beyond when it comes to their job. And
Yeah.
sometimes, I mean, I'm all for people being passionate and people doing what they love, but there is sometimes that you just think you just calm down a little bit. Just it's been a hard few years.
Yeah.
Just
You're bringing up something. The pandemic eliminated a lot of office culture, right? If I could drop into my New York vernacular for a second, office culture, and and what has happened is that the operators of office culture, those who don't necessarily know how to do anything but are very very good at the political maneuvering inside of an office in a person to person dynamic, right? When
yeah.
there's a group, some people are very very good at that, and I don't know. I can't speak for UK office culture. My only experience of that, to be honest, is a little bit of being in the Sony offices back in 2001 and the David Brent original BBC Office series, seasons 1 and 2, and the Christmas special. So, aside from that, my limited experience of UK office culture, but my American experience is pretty extensive. I worked in a lot of office jobs, and I am familiar with the type of worker, coworker who is not particularly good at any part of the actual job, but excels at the political maneuvering and is somehow always a little bit ahead of the game, getting others in trouble, coming out on top.
Yeah.
You're familiar with this.
This is exactly what I'm talking about.
This is the elaborate.
This is it.
Yeah,
This is
okay. So
exactly what I'm talking about.
yeah, I know. Oh, I can have that as a pet peeve as well. That leaves
It's
a
like
scar.
you're there putting procedures in place, and then it's kind of you follow the procedure. They don't follow the procedure, and then they're telling you off for not following said procedure. And you're like, but if everyone just did what they were supposed to do and everyone just communicated
I've never been as bothered by contradictory because people are full of contradictions, right? We
oh,
change our
all the
minds.
time.
we endeavor to do things we realize we didn't understand fully what the endeavor entailed. We have to modify our approach. We have to change the time frame. We have to figure out how much longer or how much less time it's going to take. That happens all the time. What I'm more upset by is the sort of pedantic, very rulesy person who is obsessed with what has been said already about something and is like stubbornly adhering to this. Well, actually, you were here when it changed. You saw that things are different now because that was at nighttime and now the sun is up. Like the really simple,
That was
like
3 weeks ago.
yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, like improvisation is part of human frailty. We use improvisation to overcome our failure of imagination, right? You go to do something, whether it's fulfilling an order for office printers for a new
Yeah.
company, or getting the Apollo lunar lander not to kill the occupants when it bursts into flames. That those are real problems. Those are both real
Yeah.
problems, and we all fail to imagine what the endeavor is eventually going to be like, right? We can plot it out, we can plan it. None of us ever, not the best engineers at NASA or the worst managers of a deli in the Bronx, will ever get it 100% right when they
No.
plan a sandwich or a lunar landing or anything, right? So some degree of improv is required to get across the finish line. Is people who don't really care much for that fact of life, who are just like digging into the what should have been. You
Stop
said that it
it.
was good. Yeah. Like that whole thing is
Just
just
go
like,
outside.
wow, man. Like, I mean, I don't know what you want from me as no human being who can ever make predictions that are going to be good enough for your expectation. Like, so, and I think that that's another area where the politics can come in. If somebody can make a really big pedantic point about
Yeah.
something in a meeting, oh boy, you know.
I feel like I'm gonna have to rename this to like the office shop.
Yeah, call it
I feel like,
call it
yeah,
call it power shifters.
exactly. Get rid of that. To be fair though, thank you for that. I feel better.
I'm glad. I'm
Is
glad.
there anything that gets on your nerves that you would like to get off your chest?
Um. Well, this is a bit broad, but I think that we're all facing, uh, society at large, the whole entire world perhaps, is facing a resurgence of the disingenuous argument.
Okay.
Right? When you know that you're wrong, but you see an angle to argue anyway. Right?
Yeah.
This is the right. This goes on now. Of course, not to get too dark, but this goes back to the re-emergence of fascism, right? There's a essay by Jean-Paul Sartre who it's called "Anti-Semite and Jew," which is this fascinating deconstruction of the fascist argument, how it begins, how it develops, and how it's never really about who's right or wrong,
Yeah.
but rather it's about the perpetuation of a taunt.
Ah, okay.
Somebody on one side is interested in getting to the truth and finding out what the facts are and having an answer. The other person is looking best to avoid the facts and have no answer and continue the taunt.
To push it, yeah.
Right. So I think that has become popularized recently. It was always lurking, but en masse in our political ideologies and our campaigns and our Brexit, for instance, right?
Yeah. Oh
Sovereignty
God,
for
don't do that. Not on this.
sovereign. Well,
We've just
well,
got
look,
over that.
have you now?
No, we're not.
I
We're
don't
not.
think you'll
Do
ever
you know what
get
I
over.
haven't? I've just got back from Greece and I
Right.
had to use the separate queue. And I'm watching all the Europeans like stroll right through when I'm there in
Yeah.
this big long ass queue. So no, I'm
Well,
still not over it, to be fair.
somehow I don't feel like any of these sort of more famous or notable proponents of Brexit have such a hard time getting in and out of Belgium, where they live, or France, or any of the
Yeah,
other places that they
exactly.
have summer homes. Um, sovereignty for you folk, uh, globalism for the rest of us.
I
That's that's how they split it. They split it down the classes. So
feel like I've learned so much already in such a short period of time.
yeah, well,
You
I'm not sure
guys are
it's all good.
you're literally the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, Teenage Dirtbag is a bit of a cockroach, I will admit. It has has survived a few nuclear winters.
A few. I feel like that song's going to be playing when the world has ended. But to be fair, it's one of the questions that I did actually want to, I did want to ask you before we kind of dived into the history of like your journey and stuff like that. But
Mm.
did you know at that time of writing Teenage Dirtbag that it was gonna go on to be like this? It is soundtracked not only like movies, but like people's youths, and it's still do. I mean, it must have like a resurgence, like constantly. I mean, 2022, like it everywhere again.
Yeah.
Like,
Um, well, I knew that it was a good song, that it was a strong narrative, that it was a good sing along, and that it rocked. But I had been in and out of enough false start situations
yeah.
and actually full start situations where I was ripped off pretty badly during the
Oh wow.
90s
Okay.
in other projects that I knew that it didn't matter how good the song was on some level, that a lot of
Yeah.
the other things, a lot of other like sort of esoteric time and place pieces had to fall in place. And um, I guess the marked sensation of having finished the song in 95 or 96, whenever it was a completed work with all the lyrics, was a little bit of nervousness. And
Oh,
I could say
okay.
that I was scared
Yeah.
that something bad would happen to it,
Yeah.
and not the good thing that could be, because I had seen that. So
Yeah.
um, that's the accurate description. I kind of knew it was strong, but I was really worried that it wouldn't
Yeah.
see the light of day. And frankly, when it came out in the year 2000 here in America, it came and went very quickly. This is not very well known because it has gone on to do other things, but it
Yeah.
came and went in that summer relatively quickly on American radio and was sort of, considering the sort of post Woodstock 99 new
Yeah.
metal era, was kind of laughed at on American radio a little bit as being a
Okay.
little too 1 foot in each world, pop and
Yeah.
heavy rock. So um, we were by the time it had come out and had its first quarterly cycle of whatever being out amongst the world, we were pretty scared that it was over in America,
Okay.
and that would leave us around late November of 2000.
Is there moments now where you look back at, with those fears and I guess that level of kind of like anxiety, like, it's going to be a bit of a flash in the pan to like, especially now, be like, okay, have you took a moment to be like, we did something special with this?
Um, it's hard to see it that way. I feel like the world has done something special with this.
Yeah.
I've often described this sensation that when we play it live, it doesn't belong to us; it belongs to the audience.
Yeah.
How they want it, how they need to hear it, is much more important than what we're feeling or going through or thinking that day in terms
Yeah.
of how loud we'd like to be or what kind of a song we'd like to. It's never in our hands 100%. So back to the earlier conversation, when you put something out there in a creative endeavor, you leave
Yeah.
it to the world to be either hated or loved or somewhere in between. And this is a possessive feeling that I experience that's not my possession, but it belongs to the audience listening to it. And I think that's because the way people see themselves in the narrative through the generations or across the gender spectrum, um, I think that is the reason it survives and not its construction so much.
Yeah.
So that's how I feel about that.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
It's a banger. It's an absolute banger.
It's a
Who's what
fucking
it is.
banger, mate.
Exactly. I'll forgive you for that accent because of how
Sorry,
good the
that was
song
somewhere
is.
that started somewhere in Manchester, Liverpool area, and ended up in South Africa.
Asia somewhere.
Yeah, I don't even. I'm sorry. I apologize.
It's all good. It's all good.
You know, I used to have a pretty good regional uh, dialectic switch. All of our crew in the UK are from Liverpool, and
Nice.
after a
Yes.
week with those people, I'm Scouse approved. Like I'd pass in a greasy spoon, um, in Egbeth. But um, but I the same is true. Our merch and fan club president is Jane Greenwood from Birmingham, and
It's
we
very
kind
close
of
to where I am.
yeah, okay.
Very close.
So we do when we travel, we do get the accent back, but it's been such
Yeah.
a long time because of the pandemic. We have not been able to get back to the UK, so our accents are shite.
Well, this is my personal invitation to
Right?
come on over. We
Yeah. Get
just
an up.
come on down.
Yeah, we need an update.
Yeah, I love having a musical guest on the show purely because I like to hear how their journey started. What for you, if we're gonna like rewind a little bit, like did you grow up around music, or was there like a moment where you saw someone like perform, or you heard a certain song and was like, that's what I want to do? Like, how did that start for you?
The music was big in the family. My grandmother sang all the time while cooking. My
Love
mother and
that.
father both played instruments. My father plays the drums. He's also a pretty good Irish tenor. Um, he's no one's trained. No one ever
Yeah.
did it professionally. My father sold cars. My mother was an interior decorator, and my grandmother worked for a dermatologist. Everybody worked in the house. There was
Yeah.
no stay at home anybody. So, but I think that earliest memories would go back to sort of my mother telling me, "Oh yeah, whenever we put on Bobby Darin's Mac the Knife, you would stand there in front of the mirror, like just trying to be Bobby Darin for a second." He said, "When was that, Mom?" I was like, "2. You were 2 years old." So that's the earliest
It was there.
musical memory. Um, my parents always had Fleetwood Mac on the reel to reel. I used to know how
Yes.
to cue it up when I was 4 or 5. I used to be able to cue up secondhand news by myself. Um, my my father loved Led Zeppelin and Cream, and that stuff was always on either the CD player or the tape cassette in the
Yeah.
car. Lots of Huey Lewis, Paul Simon, Willie Nelson, Bob Marley. Um,
It's just
you
quite an
know,
eclectic kind of range then, isn't it? Like
yeah,
of
yeah.
music.
My mother was really into doo-wop, Motown, the Drifters, White Christmas, their version.
Yeah.
Anything and everything that had to do with the Temptations. They were her favorite Motown group. She taught me how to play My Girl on the guitar when I was about 8. She showed me
Oh.
the picking. She played a. My mother played in a high school folk band, and she had her nylon string, sort of Joan Baez get up, Excuse me. But aside from that, my brother and I played together early on. He was a student of the drums, and I was started learning guitar around the age of 8, and
Yeah.
took a few lessons at a local music shop, and it was about a month and a half or 2 months worth of lessons, and then I stopped and started teaching myself AC/DC and um, Dire Straits, and eventually Metallica and Prince and Rush and Yes, and just about everything that there was to absorb. I really, by the age of 14, that was my primary, almost exclusive pastime, you know?
Was there a
So
moment when you were like, this is what I want to do now? Like this is it.
that's an interesting question. There was nobody in the family, no example to call upon for
Yeah.
anybody who had like become a professional musician. So I didn't know anything about how that worked. Vague stories of selling your soul to the devil and stuff like that. That was about as close as we had to any sort of a guide on how to do it. Um, but joining into bands in college and playing New York City clubs, the first time I played CBGBs, I was 19. Um, those lessons came pretty fast,
Yeah.
uh, and to the point where you understood that, oh, it's just this sort of working class practical matter of bringing your stuff to a club, setting it up quick, playing a good set, making sure your car doesn't get broken into or you can get home somehow. And, you know, I had an amp stolen from the Stone Pony. I had another amp stolen on Bleecker Street, all of the haunts when I started frequenting them in New York City were still the same
Yeah.
sort of rough neighborhoods that you hear of in lore, and it was a steep learning curve, but I eventually figured out how not to get your shit took, and I became a sort of reliable guitarist in bands, 1991, 92, 93, 94.
I love hearing these kind of stories, especially with the people who have literally made like some of my like favorite songs of all time. How did then like those early days, like how did Wheatus like begin? Like how where did the name come from?
Well, the name was my father used to call us that when we were little kids. It's like a devolved version of the word little. When I
Okay.
say little kids, I mean infants.
Yeah.
My brother and sister and I, we all took turns being called Wheatus, which was little, 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 which turned into Weedle, 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 which turned into Wheatus, Wheatus, Wheatus.
Yeah.
So it was just a baby talk and nonsense word that I thought that's a good band name because it doesn't mean anything to anybody.
Yeah.
So this clean slate. Try not to say anything with your name. The Beatles got that clever moment locked down.
Yeah.
So don't go there. Just,
Let them do their thing.
yeah. Yeah.
See, I'm a very big believer, and I mean, like I mentioned it, before we start recording. I think I mentioned it when I hit the record button that especially Teenage Dirtbag, and to fair, even Little Respect, like for me, have kind of there've been those songs that I've kind of leaned on when they take me to a good place. They kind of remind me of the good times. They've got very, very good memories attached to them for me. With you, obviously, I know you're very open when it comes to like your journey. Has there been songs that have kind of soundtracked those moments for you?
Oh yeah. Um I tend not to turn to mood altering songs when I'm in a
Yeah,
bad one. I tend to dive into the dark feelings and explore them. I think this has
yeah,
to do with the fact that I was very depressed and lonely in high school and didn't have any respite from it. I went to a
yeah.
boys' Catholic school that was an hour and a half train ride from my house, an
Oh
hour and a
wow.
half back. So I spent 3 hours commuting every day. It was a sort of up at dawn, in bed at night, friendless,
Yeah.
socialless, opposite sexless,
Mm.
um,
There's a lot
uh,
of time to with like by
solitude.
yourself with your own thoughts as well, isn't it?
Very much so. Very much so. I learned how to talk to myself in ways that I still do that I'm sure that people who haven't had that
Yeah.
experience would think were pretty strange. Um, and in a sense, if your formative years are like that, some part of it is going to exist into your
Yeah.
later years. No, it's hard. It's I've done a lot of work with a therapist and all that stuff regarding the violence when I was a little kid and a lot of other things. But mostly, I realized that I do have some redeemable survivalist uh, uh, outlooks or
Yeah.
approaches to relationships as a result of that, and I can try to bury them and uh, form new neural paths, and I do. That's part of like therapy, right? You just
Yeah.
stop thinking what you've been thinking, start thinking something else. And for the time in between, you don't really know who to be because you were so used to some mechanism that was just
Yep.
ready for anything, right? So you're for some time when you're reforming your mind, you're not somebody, yet in your adulthood,
Yeah.
which is very strange. But that said, um, when it comes to anything that could become adversarial, um, and believe it or not, I've had lots of business interactions that in the music industry that s- threaten to or actually
Yeah.
do become adversarial. Um, I go to a place that is um, extreme survivalist mode. You know,
Okay.
um,
Yeah.
prepared for anything, primal anything, and I don't necessarily lash out, although I did have a problem with that early on in our career. Um, I wasn't going to call it lashing out. I would say I didn't have any filter.
Yeah.
You know, at the record label if somebody said, we think it would be great if you got some leather pants and some biker boots and a silk pirate shirt, with the fluffy thing. And
Yeah.
we got you, instead of playing an acoustic guitar with this silly hat, why don't we put you on a Les Paul or a Fender Stratocaster? And I would like, well, I would
But that's
literally
not
say to,
you.
well, I would say, but the problem is there's lots of people who get signed to record deals who know how, back to the political game again,
Yeah.
how to negotiate that energy into their advantage. And I was like, well, how the fuck did that work out when you did it in your fucking bands? You know, I don't see you wearing a pirate shirt and
Yeah.
a fucking cowboy boots, dickhead.
Like
Like,
your shirt in the
I
dry
mean,
cleaners, is it?
yeah, right. I was. So yeah, sorry about that.
No, it's okay. All good.
I'm pretty sure that during the course of this podcast recording, I broke my own microphone case. Typical lead singer behavior. Totally
He lashed
unacceptable.
out. He
Lost his, got to talking about his childhood. He completely lost his fucking mind. No
someone
one should
brought
deal
up
with this.
the flowery shirt. And it just went off. It
Sorry about that.
wouldn't be the first time. You should have seen Sean Paul when he came on here.
Oh dear. Oh dear.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Shit flying everywhere.
Jesus. Um. So anyway, back to the point is, there are spaces that you can't really get rid of that you better
Yeah.
learn how to use the right way. Um. It would be nice if we could go and not have had the past that we've had.
Yeah.
Not have learned the bad lessons or formed those neural paths that are less than, how do we say, attractive.
Yeah. It's
Um,
frustrating though, isn't it? Because I feel like there's huge part, especially from like a personal point of view, where I've spent a huge part of my life living it a certain way, and now I feel like I've hit 30, and now I'm trying to unpick the way I've lived the past 30 years to hopefully kind of live better. But obviously until, well, for as long as I'm here.
that's the thing. You're stuck with yourself, so you
Yeah.
might as well remake uh, yourself in a way that you like. You know,
Yeah.
and that's where the responsibility comes in. Therapy is work. There's lots of people who belong on and are benefit from medication. I have
Yeah.
nothing to say about that, but I also, in my own life, it's been a sort of a responsibility exercise, a diligence that
Yeah.
is required. And when I go into my therapist's office, I need to be prepared. I need to have done my homework, tell her things I'm embarrassed about that
Yeah.
make me look like a real piece of shit, and say what I'm doing wrong, hear it come out of my mouth,
Yeah.
figure out why it's happening, try and find a new circuit to run instead. You know, it's
It's an incredibly vulnerable and brave thing to do, though, isn't it? Because when people talk about therapy, you think like, oh, you're lying on a couch and there's someone sat in the corner, like kind of like this kind of old school mentality where I feel like a lot of people would benefit from it before they realize that they actually need it.
sure. Well, that's the nature of blind spots, right?
Yeah.
So like you're running through your life and you're in your mid 20s and you think you're finally figuring something out, but there's so much that you can't see, and
Yeah.
about your own behavior and about the responses that you've learned to the world, and parenting is a thing as well. Although they're they're people too, like imperfect and so on. So, um, I prefer to take it from scratch. I was listening to there's a Sting song. You're talking about songs that you listen to when
Big
you're
lovers. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
He has an album called The Soul Cages, which is my favorite. That's the big one for me. And it's a concept record about loss of faith and atheism and departing from the patterns that you were taught by those who came before you, stepping off of the paved road
Yeah.
of your forebears, and becoming a new kind of, in his case, Sumner. His last name. So you are going to be lost for some time because you've stepped off of whatever you know. and you're trying to find something to be that is unfamiliar but better, right?
Yeah.
So that's therapy. Get ready to not know yourself for a while when you abandon it and start forming new neural paths and new responses. Um,
Are you happy that you did it? Are you happy?
oh
Oh,
yeah,
obviously doing it.
I'm
Yeah.
probably alive because I did it.
Wow.
No,
Wow.
no joke, no joke. I was suicidal in high school. I was having those feelings again around 2009.
Wow.
That's when I got into therapy, and I had uh, adapted what the trappings of my surroundings were, sort of like just power through it, suck it up. In your world, it would be
Yeah.
stiff upper lip kind of
Yep.
thing.
That's what we do as Brits.
Carry on in quiet desperation and all that.
And
Um,
that's the one.
and I was it wasn't working. Turns out it doesn't. Turns out it doesn't work like that. I'm not a hater of stoicism.
Yeah.
I admire people and consider myself one people who can power through something and get the job done and invent a new way to complete the task if there isn't one obvious, you know. Even under duress, even if the working conditions are less than optimal, I can tolerate a ton of abuse, right? Like the jobs that I had when I was a teenager, you know, I mean the guys I respect the most, the guys at the fish market. You know,
Yeah.
the first time I cut a tuna, they came up behind one guy came up behind me. He said, "You cut another one like that, I'm going to drown you in the fucking lobster tank." You know, like
I love how your voice slightly changes when you go back to
that's what
those
he said.
memories.
That's what he said. You know, uh, but that's the thing. That's when I grew up. When I was 16 years old, I had a thick Long
Yeah.
Island, New York accent, and I spoke the language, and I walked the walk, and I was, you know, a pretty tough little kid. You know,
Yeah.
um, and not all in a good way. You know,
Yeah.
there's lots of cool stuff about being tough, of being able to hack difficult search situations, and there's also a ton of toxic bullshit that comes with that you're going to spill onto other people because you don't know you're an asshole. You know, that's reality too. So
No, I relate to that. I feel the feel that one. I'm a big believer. I mean, music is one of my biggest coping mechanisms, whereas I also like to journal and I tend not to do the generic things that quite a lot of people do, like the walks and stuff like that. But I mean, they're great techniques that people use, when things get a little bit much. What is there anything else? 'Cause I imagine music is an outlet for you.
sure.
But is there anything else that you kind of lean on when things do get a little bit much that kind of gives you that space?
BMX biking, just
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
the application of physical energy towards something you can control. For that matter, guitar is the same thing.
Yeah.
It's a bit more sophisticated than BMX biking, but you get the point. Um,
It's a bit safer.
right.
It depends. Unless you just do both at
You
the
know,
same time.
yeah, you've been on tour. I don't
Yeah.
know. Our documentary is actually called "You Might Die." But I clean the kitchen sometimes. I'll do the washing.
Yeah.
I do the dishes on the bus too when we're on tour. Um, I have a terrible time winding down for bed. It's
Yeah.
almost impossible for me. Um, Best if I can watch some good story for a little while, long enough to
Yeah.
just stop the clock jittering. You know,
Yeah.
dishwashing is another thing.
Do you know
I
what? I'm going to say
Pets.
this, Brendan.
Yeah,
You're the first person that has come on this show that has actually spoke about a coping mechanism being like something like a household thing. When I things get a little bit much, I do the ironing.
yeah. Okay, so you know
So
what
and,
it's
and
like.
literally, I've been doing this for 3 years. You're the first person who's come on and like I get that completely because I'm not thinking about anything else other than I need it to look a certain way.
Yeah, it's about being out of control, right?
Yeah,
Like you're spun. You can't get your head or your hands or your energies around the thing that you're really wound up about.
yeah,
So you have to let that pressure out. You have to release the valve by actually doing something that you can control. In
yeah,
my life, early on, control issues, lots of there was a PTSD event, and it was
yeah,
really something that I never talked about until very, very, very much later, and it was immersed in, and surrounded by lots and lots of other uh, less
Yeah.
serious PTSD events, and I uh, I was using guitar as a control mechanism that I became addicted to. Right, I was
Wow.
controlling
Okay. Yeah.
something. I was manipulating the strings. I was making a sound come out. It was a universe that was entire. I was a god of that universe. No matter how stumbly or clumsy I was trying to learn a song, it was still me doing it.
Yeah.
Nobody could say anything. Nobody could interfere. Nobody could come in and redirect. And that evolved into my general approach to music, which is why I kept the demoing process for Wheatus secret for close to 4 years. I was writing and recording the first album by myself, not showing anybody, on a
Yeah.
4 track with a drum machine and a bass controlling all the elements. Much later in life, in my 20s, the earlier version of that is playing guitar in my mother's living room on Saturdays and
Yeah.
Sundays. But um, eventually, I succeeded with a song or two, as you mentioned, but the mechanism that brought it to bear was this ancient control dynamic that was not necessarily putting me in a good place with my music. My music had become, or was always,
Yeah.
a um, a weapon, a tool for controlling the universe and my immediate surroundings, and having to unravel that in my adulthood and reapply it in a positive way. It's been a pretty complex challenge. It's still
Yeah.
ongoing. I work much slower than I used to. You know, I used to I used to be able to stay up for 3 days and do music and not
Wow.
sleep. I was not good for me. I wasn't putting my health first.
No.
I
Yeah.
was putting my control instinct first. So yeah, I mean, and to the world, as you've said, is people who have taken Teenage Dirtbag and made it their own and
Yeah.
taken it away from us live, which is really fun. It seems like a super positive thing, but it has a very toxic side to it that I've
Yeah.
been working sort of really. It's really complicated. It's like you're trying to parse your nerves. You're trying to get the good bits separated from the bad bits, and they're all interwoven and confused. And
Yeah.
that's also the nature of therapy, talk therapy anyway. So
Honestly, thank you for one for sharing that. This might be a bit of a personal question, but I mean this from like because you've said a few things there that have kind of really hit home for me.
hmm,
And obviously you're probably not familiar, but like this podcast was born out of a very difficult event for me where my mom very much nearly died, which is now in a neurological care home, going through extensive rehab and kind of, I mean, she'll never come home. She might not be able to walk again. And I put these episodes out as a form of therapy, like to connect with people. And there's a point of it where, some of them do quite well when you get like a bit of praise and people are like, oh yeah, it's helped me do this. But there's still a huge part of me that's like, I'm still struggling. Like I'm still feeling all these emotions, which is the reason why I started it.
hmm,
And I feel like you've just kind of articulated it in a way that I felt like I'm not on my own. Hearing the way that you've kind of just spoken, the like, especially with Teenage Dirtbag and stuff, that I feel like, okay,
yeah.
it's
Well,
valid.
I'm glad, but I have to say, um, Waffle Shop could go to the top of the charts, be the most popular podcast in the world, and you will still feel that way.
Yeah,
There is no degree of success, or failure for that matter, that will shake your purpose in this, which is not entirely conscious on your part,
yeah,
perhaps. And that's okay, you know, as long as the unconscious parts don't become so toxic to others or yourself
yeah,
that you just keep grinding down. But um, that's a really hard thing to craft a
yeah.
sophisticated approach out of. It's very hard. It might be impossible, and I'm not trying to be hopeless, but it's
No, no,
very
but I completely agree with everything that you're saying.
right. Um, How old were you, if you don't mind me asking, when it happened?
So when it happened, I was 27. So I was in that stage of like, I'm saving, I'm going to move out, I'm going to go traveling, I'm doing this. Then all of a sudden, it was like, bam, life is on hold. I've got to obviously sort of being, well, not necessarily. This is why it kind of struck a chord, because I felt like I had to be in control of that situation. Whether it took me about 2 years to realize I can't be in control of this situation, because regardless of what's going to happen, it's going to happen whether I'm here, there, or that it's completely out of my control. So that's when I kind of, well, the podcast started, because it was an outlet for me to kind of, I can control this. I can control
Right.
like what's happening. So that kind of thing I can really relate to on certain levels.
I think it's easy to, and I envy the people who can, um, have a sort of lighthearted approach to the concept of existence and life and
Yeah,
purpose and these things. And in some sense, I feel like I was fortunate to have those things shattered severely when I was younger
yeah,
and never have depended on them ever. And I think that there are people who survive all the way into adulthood with, I don't want to call it rosy glasses, but sort of an
oh no,
un,
100%.
un
I've got friends
untainted,
like that. Yeah.
right? Yeah, an untainted sense of existence. Um, but not being one of them and knowing that you're not either, um, I think that just um, it's important to not forget that your approach is different because of that.
Yeah.
You know, like to everything. I make toast differently than other people do.
What?
You know,
How
right?
dare you?
Like
Do not come on
it's
this. You come on a British podcast and tell me that you
this
make
morning.
toast differently.
This morning, my girlfriend Gabrielle and I she was making food for the dogs and breakfast, and I was trying to butter the toast. And we have this tiny little countertop, not enough room. And I was holding a plate with the eggs in one hand and a knife, a butter knife in the other. And there was the big vat of butter. And I thought I need a third hand to get this out. So I took the knife and I stabbed right through the bottom of the butter, turned it upside down, and walked over to the sink with it and put it back down. And she looked at me like I was nuts, right? And rightly so. I was improvising
You adapted and
a
you
crude
overcame.
solution. Yeah, a very crude solution to, to to that issue of not having a third hand. And I, in some sense, like the notion that I would be waylaid by having to put this plate down, it just doesn't make any sense, right? No, 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 no. We're just gonna,
The
here we go.
exact
There we go.
same thing.
You know, right? So, and I think that that makes you that's a big difference. That's, you're different from other people.
Yeah.
Um, and you know, the problem is what you don't know.
Yeah.
You know, that's the problem.
I think it does. It takes those moments and those kind of like pivotal kind of moments in people's life to make you realize, like, it's okay to be different. It's okay I didn't react the way someone else did. It's okay that I didn't quite, adapt as quickly, or I didn't adapt, or I don't know. I don't really know what I'm saying with that, but like, it's okay
Can I
not to be
yeah, can I
like
complete that
everyone else.
thought?
Yeah, definitely.
It is okay. And in acknowledging that it's okay, you have to also acknowledge that it's okay because you know that it might be better and it could also be worse,
Yeah.
right? And that just because you've improvised an approach or you have a quirk or you have some kind of learned response that might not be healthy on its surface, your brain's trying to protect itself from something, right?
Yeah.
This is the protective mechanism. And you might need to throw it out, right? It might be pure trash. You might also find that it's given you maybe a little bit of a better, more efficient, or holistic view on something that you wouldn't normally have. So if you can go in there and perform the surgery, the neurological surgery of removing the super toxic stuff and letting the solution remain, you know, like letting the adaptive positivity remain while eliminating the adaptive negativity, but keeping it for a rainy day because you don't like to be a total optimist either,
No.
right? Like, it's it's tricky. Once you're
No one's
dark,
that
it's
happy all
tricky.
that time.
Right, 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 right.
I
Well,
worry
so
about
I
those people. They're the ones that go home and like kicks the cat or something. I don't know. That was the first thing I thought of. But that's really worrying. But it's true.
bastards.
Yeah.
You cheery
Bastard cat.
bastards. Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
I've absolutely loved this. But there's a few final questions that I
sure,
need to
yeah.
ask.
Yeah.
So you've come from a very musical family. You've created, songs that. To be fair, there's one thing actually that that really bothers me with Wheatus. Is that I don't ever remember learning the words to Teenage Dirtbag, but for some reason, I've always known them.
Yeah.
Why?
Apologies again. Well, they call it an earworm for a purpose. Did you ever see The Wrath of Khan, the Star Trek film, where they drop this strange little space creature that goes in your ear and wraps itself around your
Is that what
cerebral
you've been
cortex?
doing?
I mean, in some sense, Teenage Dirtbag was designed to be a weapon that would go through the music industry and undo whatever barriers or gatekeeper bullshit there was, or take care of the management issue and the lawyer issue, and it's a weaponized piece of entertainment. It's too long too. That's the other thing.
It's
It's
a
four
piece of
minute
art.
four
It's a
minutes and
piece of
20
art.
seconds. Yeah, right,
That's
right.
what it is. It should be
Yeah,
hanging in the Louvre next to the
art
Mona
fair,
Lisa.
not warfare. Art fair. Yeah.
But
um
it's obviously you come from a musical background. You've created those songs that get people on the dance floor. When it comes to getting Brendan on the dance floor, I mean, you might not be a dancer, but like, what song needs to be playing for you to
oh,
get the foot tap in?
anything from Prince will do it.
Oh yes, okay.
It's instantaneous, and in particular, the look. The song "The Look." What a time!
Yes,
God, Raspberry Beret.
Raspberry.
Um,
Yes,
Alphabet Street. I mean, like it like there's so many instantaneous. You hear the first beat, the
yes.
first downbeat, the first kick drum. You're running onto the dance floor. It's got to be
I feel like
Prince.
I would die for you. I still feel like
There you
it's like
go.
some weird. It's not obviously not like a big kind of like dancey song, but I still feel like I could throw some shapes to it.
No, if Prince doesn't make you dance, your brain might be broken. So go get it checked.
Okay, that makes me
Yeah.
feel so much better. Thank you for that. So my next question is, you've kind of already answered it, with like Sting, and obviously you're saying like you kind of you explore those feelings when things do get a little bit much. But like, is there
Mhm.
a song that you feel like was potentially written for you, or is there a song that kind of brings out the emotion,
Um,
or an album even?
there are tons. There are tons and tons. Willie Nelson uh, did a song on one of his records called "I'd Have to Be Crazy," and then in parentheses, "To Fall Out of Love with You." Um, that's
I'm adding
that
that to the
feels like that
playlist.
feels like me. That feels like me
Yeah,
singing. I sing that song and I feel like I'm singing it. That's one of them. Um, One of my childhood memories before I knew what the song was about, and this sort of like naive instinct of like, "Ooh, this is the one," was "Buffalo Soldier" by
Bob Marley.
Bob Marley. Yeah, um, just the when those horns come in at the
Yeah.
beginning, da 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 da, da, and it just like that was it. Like I was like, "Oh, that's the one," and I was very very young, 4 or 5 years old.
Don't you just
Uh,
love how music does this though?
oh man, just like burns you. It burns you. It's not a tattoo. It's a brand.
It's
You
an
know.
imprint.
Yeah, it totally is. Um, what else? Other ones, songs I wish I wrote, like would be
Oh,
like,
okay. That's a good one.
um, boy, uh, man, that's tough because there are just too many. Um, Ani DeFranco's "Dilate." I don't know if you've ever heard that song.
No, but
Check
again,
check
add to
check
the
that out.
playlist.
Yeah, the song "Dilate" is incredible. "Untouchable Face" is another one on that record.
Yeah.
Napoleon. Um, yeah. I really like this Paul Simon song "Proof," which is on Rhythm of the Sea.
Oh, I'm a
Um,
big You Can Call Me Al fan,
yeah,
and
that's
Diamonds on the Sole of Her Feet.
yeah. That record, the Graceland record,
Hmm.
is a masterwork. But the one that came after it, in I think 1990 or 91. It's called Rhythm of the Saints, and it's just incredible. It's not as popular,
So
but
I'd really quite like to go for a beer with you.
yeah.
To talk about
Next time,
this.
next time, we're
Is
in.
that okay then? Is there plans?
So yeah, autumn 2023 looks like we're in the UK for. I'm trying for about 45
Stop.
shows. Yeah, I'm
Yes.
trying. I'm going for the fences, man. I really would like to get as many shows in as we possibly can. We used to tour like that. We used to play 45 shows in 43 days. You
Yeah.
know, we were crazy.
Bloody
Um,
hell.
mostly it was driven by money because once you're
Yeah.
in the country, you've spent so much to get there, you got to make it back.
Make it
So
back. Yeah,
right, so days off are like, who needs those?
yeah.
Um,
Totally them.
but and do Ireland and Northern Ireland and the European continent. That would be my perfect dream to end 2023 on
Yes.
in the autumn. Yeah,
I'm going to hold you to that.
yeah, trying to. I'm working on it right now.
Not right this minute, right now. So, he hasn't been
just
listening to a
just
word I've
texting
said.
my
Yeah.
booking agent here. Sorry.
It's okay. No one listens to me. It's great. I'm just grateful you turned up. Honestly,
Well,
you have been an absolute dream to have a waffle with. Like, I've laughed, I've like learned, and more importantly, I've got more songs now to add to the playlist.
great.
So honestly, thank you so much for joining me for a
Oh,
waffle.
thank you for having me. This is a treat. Let's keep in touch seriously on the side.
100%.
Get the email going so we can exchange information and keep in touch. Let's do that.
No, I think I'm gonna combust us. This is insane.
Okay. So don't get excited. I haven't done it yet. So we got to figure out
Okay,
if it's
sorry.
got to improvise a solution here. Let me tune up and make sure that we do it so that the royal family would approve or whatever.
Big fans of the show, by the way. Big
Oh
fans,
yeah,
the
yeah,
Royal Philharmonic Orchestra.
yeah, yeah. Okay. All right. Let's see what we get here. I'll aim the guitar, the mic in a better spot, and see what we get. Okay. Okay. Let me think about this. Cause I'm just a teenage dirtbag, baby. Yeah, I'm just a teenage dirtbag, baby. Listen to the Waffle Shop podcast, baby, with me. Ooh. Oh yeah, Waffle. No, you just don't know what you're missing. Oh yeah, Waffle. No, you just don't know what you're missing. The Waffle Shop podcast. Watch it, listen to it as well every chance you get. Okay,
Yes.
there you go.